Hey guys, I am back today with a discussion on Game of Thrones episode 2 for season 8. I'm going to do things a little bit differently for this one because I feel like we don't really need like a big recap. By now, you guys have probably watched the episode. I mean, you can pretty much get recaps anywhere and all that, but I really just want to focus on like my discussion and just key things about each episode because it's going to be so different. So in my previous episode, I talked about my favorite like reunions and my favorite quotes. So I definitely want to keep the quotes thing going because there's so many good lines through each episode so far. So I will let you guys know what I loved there. Then I also wanted to talk about like my favorite moments. And in that, we can do like a discussion and because certain parts of the show and of the episode and all that. And I'm really just gonna jump into spoilers, and I just don't like to keep myself limited in the sense where I want to talk about as much as I can, and I think that it's better just going in knowing that spoilers are gonna happen. And I figure like if you're gonna watch these kind of videos or listen to this, then you already have watched the episode and know what's going on, and you just want like somebody else to kind of comment on it and all that. And so that's what I'm gonna do. And then after I talk about all that, I want to talk about my death predictions, who I personally think is going to survive and who I think is going to die. I am just like so anxious for this episode, and this weekend in general is going to be epic because Avengers Endgame is coming out, which I'm watching that on Saturday night, and then this big ass battle of Winterfell is coming on Sunday night, a whole 80 something minutes, and it's just gonna be epic. So I cannot wait. All right, so let's just jump right into it. So this episode was titled A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, but really it should have been called The Calm Before the Storm because that's basically what it was. Everything was just set up. You get one last hurrah with all of your favorite characters and people who you never would have expected to interact and have nice conversations and just be in the same room together. It's happening. It's there. It's really just giving you a nice, warm final look at some of your favorite characters, and not everybody's going to survive. And in fact, as much as I hate losing some key characters, I prefer if a lot of people did die. I mean, we'll go into death predictions later, but like if some of the main characters didn't die at such an epic war battle, then it really would just be so anticlimactic. So first I'm gonna start off talking about my favorite moments within the episode, and when I get to like a certain scene, then I can tell you about my favorite quote of that scene, just because it makes more sense when it's in the context of the scene for you guys to understand how awesome the quote is. Okay, so but it's not going to be in any type of order, just really what comes to mind first. Although this isn't a big moment for the overall arc and plot and all that, it was a pretty key moment in the episode was when Brienne was knighted by Jaime. That just kind of leads into my prediction that she's gonna die in the next episode. But yeah, so all she's ever wanted her whole life was to be knighted, to be viewed as an equal in that kind of world, and just she wanted to step out of the norm of what women were expected to do, and she's really deserved it. Honestly, she's always been very honorable, and she's an excellent fighter and all that. And so I think that it was truly deserved, and I thought it was very touching that Jaime was the one that did it. And he said, a king or a queen, a monarch doesn't always have to be the one to knight you. It could be another knight. And so I thought it was such an amazing scene where he knights her, and it was very touching. And it was honestly one of the first times when you see Brienne so happy and so touched and all that emotion on her face. Gwendolyn did an amazing job portraying that. And that scene played out very, for a good 5-10 minutes, and so it was very important to the episode and to the characters. And then before that, actually, you have Brienne, Podrick, Tyrion, Jaime, Davos, and Tormund all sitting around the fireplace, and they're just discussing and drinking and just having a nice little chat before the battle begins. some of my favorite quotes within that scene was all from Tormund. Honestly, I have to give it to Tormund. I'm going to tell you right now that he was the star of the episode. And really a good chunk of the last few seasons, ever since he's been a part of the show, he's become one of my absolute favorite characters, and I love every scene that he's in. He's so hilarious, and yes, he's become like the comic relief of the show because the show is so dark and so dramatic. Sometimes you need something like that, but he's also so much more, and he's such a great character. And so they're all sitting around the fireplace, and then he comes in, and of course he gives Brienne that look. That's like, that look of his, it's so hilarious. And like, he just drags the chair over all nonchalantly and then just sits right next to her, and then he begins telling her about how did he get his last name, because his last name is Giantsbane, and he was just saying how like he defeated a giant when he was young, and then he drank giant's milk. And so that's one of his quotes. It says, "That's how I got so strong, giant's milk." And then he had it in his little horn thing, and he started drinking it. He was like basically chugging it, and it was just all coming down his neck and stuff, and it was so hilarious and so awkward, and I loved everybody's reaction to it. Like, it's just one of my favorite scenes. He's just amazing. And then like later on, when before Brienne gets knighted and they're all talking about it, like he was asking her why she wasn't a knight, and she said that it's because women can't be, and it's tradition. He's like, fuck tradition. And he's like, oh, if I'm no king, but if I were, I'd knight you 10 times over. And he just, the way that he says it just sounds so like sexual, and there's like, it's funny, but also so sweet. And he's just like, he's so in awe and so in love with her, infatuated with her really, because when she does get knighted and she stands up and everybody starts clapping, and you cut to him, and he's just like so excited. Like, he's like a proud boyfriend or a proud husband or something. The way that he looks at her and he's clapping, and he's so overjoyed. Like, he's so happy that this happened for her. And I thought that was so precious and so sweet. And even though I know that Brienne isn't much for emotions and romance and all that, but she really genuinely has strong feelings for Jaime. They had a very tumultuous relationship, but then also they connected so much when they were traveling back to King's Landing, and he is such an important part of her life and her history that it's really hard for her to actually care or like somebody else. And so I can tell, like, as much as I want Tormund and Brienne to get together, I highly doubt that they will, because it's so one-sided. Like, she just, he would have to work really, really hard, and there would have to be absolutely no chance between her and Jaime for her to even consider being with somebody like Tormund. Or I don't know, maybe he saves her life, and then there's that whole, she sees a spark or something. I don't think that he'll get what he wants. So let me go through a couple other Tormund quotes that I loved before we talk about other quotes and other scenes, just because I really love every line that he says. Every word that he says is just so funny. When he first gets to Winterfell, Jon gives the announcement that some other people are here, and then that's Ed and Beric, and they come in, and Jon sees them, and he runs over to them, and right before he gets to them, Tormund tackles him, and he's like, "My little crow." And I was just like, oh my god, he's so cute. Their relationship is so adorable. I love it. That was so cute. And then he hugs him, and then he tells him about what happens, and they're all like, oh my god, the White Walkers are coming. We only have until the morning. Everything's crazy. We're so worried. We're so scared. And then Tormund's like, "Is the big woman still here?" And I die. He's so hilarious. This was like right at a little bit towards the beginning, after they had the trial with Jaime. Oh, he's a one-track mind kind of guy. Like, yeah, when it comes down to it, like, he'll fight the battles, and he's very serious in that front, and he's such a good fighter. But then, like, he wants his woman, and he's gonna try to get her. So that is hilarious. But anyways, I'm going to go to another favorite moment was when Jaime was standing in front of everybody in the hall when he just arrived, and Dany's there, and she's saying, "Why should I spare your life? You're telling me that Cersei lied. She didn't bring an army. You're here, and what's happening and all that." And so they go through that whole spiel, and they really don't believe him, even though he says he's there to fight because he wants to fight for the living. But Brienne stands up. she defends him, and she makes remarks about how honorable he's become, especially with their time together, and how he saved her life and all of this. And if he says that he's there to fight for them, then that's what they should believe. And then Sansa's like, okay, if you trust him with your life, then I will trust him as well. And so they kind of just disband, and they just let him. We'll see if he actually is true to his word. And so I really loved that. And again, it kind of just goes back to Brienne and Jaime's relationship, how they have a very strong connection, and it was so unexpected to how they were paired together and how their whole dynamic. But I really liked it. Honestly, before Tormund came on the scene, I really wanted them to get together. In terms of balance, I think that Tormund and Brienne balance each other very well, because he's so outgoing and crazy and wild, where she's very conservative and honorable and all that stuff. And so they kind of mix well together. But her and Jaime are connected on another level, and so it's really hard for me. Like, obviously I would pick her and Tormund because I think he's so adorable, and I think that he really should get her. But if he was never on the scene, I would really love Jaime and Brienne to get together. So another scene that happens later on is when Jaime and Bran get together and they have the conversation. Bran is just chilling by the Godswood tree, as he usually does, and Jaime comes and talks to him, and he's like, why didn't you tell people about what happened? And Bran's like, well, if I tell them, you're gonna die, and so how would that help us in the war? And so he just kind of goes back, and they kind of go back and forth, and he explains that he's not really Bran anymore, and who knows what's going to happen after the war, if anybody even survives. And so really we should focus on the bigger picture. And so that was just a nice way to just really tie in their relationship and see how their relationship goes moving forward and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if both of them survive afterwards, how they handle it, and will Bran eventually tell people about what happened. So another conversation scene that happened that I really liked was the one between Sansa and Dany. I have to say, there's a lot of like conversation scenes. The first episode was all reunions and just being happy to see each other and other people actually meeting each other, but then this one is all about conversations, really getting everything out in the open, clearing the air and all that stuff. And so Sansa and Dany have their conversation, and Dany's just trying to clear the air, saying, why are we at odds with each other when we really want the same thing? And Sansa's like, I don't know if we do. I feel like Jon is in love with you, so he's being manipulated. Dany makes a point in the fact that she really wants the Iron Throne, but then yet here she is kind of sidetracked from that, and she's trying to fight Jon's war. She could just like let it all play out and wait until the Night King and them get down to King's Landing and deal with that on their own. But she's here with them trying to defend Winterfell, trying to defend your home and all that stuff. And so really, who's the one being manipulated? And that was a really good point. And Sansa really conceded in that front. But after that, Sansa was like, okay, so if we win this war and you're on the Iron Throne, what happens to the North? Because we don't want to bow to another monarch again. We want to be separate. Ever since Robb declared sovereignty and all that, they just don't want to go back to being ruled by the Iron Throne. And so she just really kept hounding the idea, what about the North? And Dany she wasn't having it. And so they're kind of left at a standstill in that front. I hope that by the end, this whole battle might kind of push them together and make them, they can each give a little bit in terms of that, and they can work it out. Because if Dany is on the Iron Throne and Sansa ends up being the leader at Winterfell and Jon dies, who knows, whatever, that they can try to work it out and have some kind of peace agreement. Some other memorable moments from the episode was when Bran talks to Tyrion. So after Jon and all of the main cast really have their little war council to kind of plan what they're going to do for this battle, everybody leaves, and the only people left in the room are Tyrion and Bran. And because Dany says that Tyrion has to go into the crypt with all of the women and children, and because he can't really fight. And so he goes over to Bran. He's like, oh, do you need any help? And Bran's just staring off into space as he normally does. And Tyrion kind of gets him to explain his whole journey, but they cut the scene, and so you don't really see what is discussed. So I really want to know that later on, and I think that comes into play later on, because who knows what's going through Tyrion's brain, especially after he learns everything that Bran's been through, how his mind is working and planning and plotting and all that. And so I thought that was very interesting, and I think that's going to be a key thing later on. Another thing that happens is when Sam and Ed and John are like standing on top of the castle, and they're just having their little bro moment, just talking about everything that they've been through. And it's just funny because like Ed's the only one that was really still in the Night's Watch. He's the only one that was never with a girl, and Sam's defending himself, saying, I'm the one who killed the White Walker first, and I've killed other people, and I've, you know, bedded women or Gilly or whatever. And it's just so funny because then Ed's like, oh wow, if we ever needed a sign that the world is ending, that's it. And I just thought it was so funny. It's a nice little touching moment for the three of them because, you know, they're basically brothers and they're bonded in that kind of way. And so it's a nice last hurrah for them, because I'm pretty sure one out of the three of them at least are going to die. Again, I'll tell you about my death predictions and all that in a minute. Another minor scene that I really liked was when Jorah and Lyanna had their little moment. That was the first time we've seen them interact together because they're cousins. A lot of times I forget, honestly, that Jorah is from the House Mormont. And it's just the way that they were interacting was that Jorah's like, really, you should, you know, you're the lady of the house, and, you know, you're still very young. You really should be down in the crypts with everybody, and you need to be safe. And she's like, no, I'm gonna fight. I'm the leader. I want to fight with my people. I'm brave and all that stuff. And more power to that girl. She's definitely one of my favorite like secondary, tertiary characters. And I thought that was funny. Like in the end, they're like, you know, good luck to each other, cousin, and all that stuff. And I thought that was very sweet. I liked that moment, you know, just to kind of touch base with that house, that family. So that was really nice. This is another, I wouldn't call it minor, but like pivotal. I guess it's between pivotal and minor scene, but that's when Arya loses her virginity. So I honestly didn't see that coming, and I have to say, I don't really care. It didn't bother me that Arya lost her virginity as a character. It bothered me so much because like, and this has been pointed out a lot throughout the internet over the last few days, is that the actress Maisie, I kind of still see her as a character. She's very short and her face looks like a child still, and also we've seen her grow up over the last 10 years, and so it's hard for me to picture her as a woman. And so when I saw her and Gendry have that love scene together, it was so awkward, and I was just like, I don't know how I feel about her. Like I'm happy for Arya that she gets that moment, and I can tell that they were building up to it. It's not something that I would watch over and over again, but it was tastefully done. You know, she got to pick how much of her body was shown, and so I liked that the producers gave her that kind of freedom and all that. And so yeah. Oh, that was also one of the quotes that I liked too. So when they had that scene, Gendry and Arya were just discussing his sex life, and she was just saying like, oh, I'm a virgin, but if I die tomorrow, I don't want to die virgin. And they were just going back and forth. She was like, oh, how many people have you been with? And he's like, I don't know, I didn't keep count. And she's like, yeah, right, I know you kept count. And then he does tell her, I think it was like 3 people or something like that. And then they start having sex. Well, and then they start getting undressed. And then what she says is, I'm not the Red Woman. Take your own bloody pants off. That's so Arya, and I love that about her. And so she just takes control, and she knows what she wants, and she goes after it. So I definitely have liked her a lot more over the last few seasons, and watching it again and stuff, I appreciate her more. So okay, and then the final scene that I loved and was very pivotal to the episode, pivotal to the series as a whole, and also one of the final scenes of the night, was when Jon finally tells Dany the truth. He was basically avoiding her this whole episode, and I kind of felt bad for Dany in that sense, because they just had that nice scene together at the waterfall, and then ever since Jaime got there, like, he's been very aloof, hasn't really talked to her. They share looks, and then he walks the other way, and I'm just like, if I was Dan, I was like, dude, what's going on? What's happening? Like, you know. So he's down at the crypts, as he tends to be, and he's just brooding and staring at the statues. And she comes over, and she's like, okay, who's this? And he's like, it's Lyanna. And then she starts talking about her brother Rhaegar. And then that's when Jon sees the opening, and he's just like, no, he didn't rape her. They got married, and they had him, and He tells her who he is. He tells her his real name. And the thing that she says, she looks at him very devastatingly, and she's like, that means you're the heir, the last male Targaryen, you're the heir to the throne. And I didn't really notice this the first time, but I watched it again, and I can kind of see like the look that he gives her. It's like not really a look of sadness anymore. At first he was really sad because he's worried that their connection as a family would affect their relationship in the romantic way, but I think he sees that all she cares about is the throne, and she doesn't care about their love and their relationship. And I feel like that's going to come very much into play in the forefront later on, when he's like, you know, you don't care about me, your number one is the throne. When, like, aside from the whole Night King and White Walkers and all that stuff, Dany is supposedly like his number one because he loves her, and when he's in love, that's all he really cares about. But when it comes to Dany, all she cares about is the throne and sitting on the throne and being the ruler for Westeros and all that. There was a point that was made that I read somewhere that it's a little bit odd for Jon to come to terms with this because they're related and then they slept together and all that stuff. And so he's still griping on that and he's focused on that. But Dany, she comes from a family that is full of incest, and that's all they've ever known. You know, that's how they all have blonde hair, and that's how they keep their bloodlines pure, because they all, you know, get married and sleep with other people in their families. So I feel like it's not so uncommon and so unheard of, and it doesn't bother her in that sense. And so I can understand where she's coming from. She doesn't see it as a problem, and it's not like their brother and sister where it would be... even though obviously in their Targaryen past, brothers and sisters don't really make that much of a difference. But, you know, aunt and nephew is not too far-fetched for her, so it doesn't bother her in that sense. And I hope that she makes that clear to him, that the family thing isn't an issue. And, you know, I still love you and I still want to be with you, but what are we going to do with this whole lineage and hierarchy and all that in terms of the throne? So... I hope that that's why her first concern shoots to the Iron Throne, and it's not because that she doesn't care about him. So we'll see how that plays after the battle. And then speaking of the battle, the very, very last scene, the last thing that we see is the White Walkers have finally made it to Winterfell. There's a whole line of the generals, the actual White Walkers that the Night King turned, you know, the babies into. They're just a whole lot of them. Like before I only thought there was a few of them, but really you saw about like 10 of them. And so they're all just there and they're waiting, and that's when, you know, they cut to black and the battle will begin next week. We got the reunions we wanted, we got the conversations that we wanted, and the information and the lighthearted moments. We got all of that. Now it's time for people to die. I'm pretty sure I'm missing a bunch of people, and there are probably a lot of like tertiary, accessory, minor characters that are going to die as well. But in terms of the people that really pop into my head, and main characters and secondary characters and all that stuff, I'm really going to pinpoint. I didn't want to be all wishy-washy and say maybe they're going to die or I hope they're not going to die. I'm just going to tell you point blank who I think is going to die and who isn't. So the people that are on my yes list, the ones that I believe are going to die, number one is Brienne. I mean, she got the best scene in the episode and she got what she wanted and she was so happy, and you know, when that happens, that's really the ones that are gonna die. So she's really at the top of my list of the secondary characters that are going to die. And then Podrick, he's more like a tertiary character and he didn't really have as many lines and stuff, and I feel like he's a good fighter. He's definitely come up, but he's just, you know, no match for the White Walkers and all that, so I feel like he's going to die. Beric, I think he's going to die because he is a key character in some ways, but I feel like, you know, he's not as important to the story after the White Walkers, so that's why I feel he's going to die. And that's how I really based it in terms of who is and who isn't going to die, is that who will serve the story much more after the battle, after the Night King dies, which I know he's gonna die because, you know, it's gonna be whoever's left against Cersei. So that's how I rationalized everything, is that who really will have an impact on Cersei and the big battle in terms of her and King's Landing and all that stuff. I really don't think that Beric has anything to do with that. And so he will die defending Winterfell, and he will die fighting the Night King or one of his generals and all that. It just makes more sense because, yeah, he has nothing to do with King's Landing, with Cersei, and any of that stuff. And I also think Davos will die, and he's just not really a good fighter, and he's definitely come up in terms of importance with the series, but I feel like they'll just make him die anyways. You know, everybody else in his story has died, really, so he's the only one left, and I'm pretty sure he's got to go. Grey Worm's gonna die. Him and Missandei had such a touching scene, and they were talking about what they would do afterwards, where they would travel, and how they would have their nice little happily ever after. And you know that the producers aren't going to let that happen, and he's really on the front lines too, because he's the leader of the Unsullied, the general, and all that and stuff. So you know, poor guy's gonna die. And I really feel like Jorah's gonna die too. Like, he's survived a lot, but his time is coming, and I think it would be very devastating to Dany, and it would also help just fuel her later on if he died. Who else do I think is gonna die? Theon. I think he's probably gonna die trying to save Sansa or something like that. And I feel like it's poetic and also just for him to die at Winterfell because of everything in his past and all that's happened. And so Ed is gonna die again after what happens at Winterfell, after the Night's Watch and the Night King. There's really not much for him in terms of story, in terms of King's Landing and Cersei, so he's gone. Lyanna, I think, might go, you know, just because she's a fan favorite and she's kind of badass, and so it'd be devastating to see her gone as well. And more key main characters that I think are gonna go is Tormund, Arya, and Drogon. One of the dragons have to die. I'll tell you that. Like, it doesn't make sense if another dragon doesn't die, because we all love the dragons, and there's going to be a big dragon battle, and I feel like one of them's going to die. And I feel like it'd be more devastating to Dany if Drogon died, because that's really her favorite kid. Sad to say for Rhaegal, but it is what it is. And so I feel like it would be more heartbreaking to see Drogon die than Rhaegal. And I don't know. I really just, it wouldn't be much of a loss if one of the dragons didn't die. As much as I don't want Tormund to die, the fact that me, as well as tons and tons of other fans, do not want Tormund to die makes me think that he's going to die, because he's such a great character, such a fan favorite. And again, it goes back to the whole, his story arc, his character will not really serve that much of a purpose against Cersei, that he needs to die. And then with Arya, it doesn't make sense to me that none of the Starks die, because, I mean, yeah, we've had, like, you know, the mom, the dad, Robb, and Rickon die already in terms of Starks. But really, this is the last, not the last, but this is one of the most epic battles. So one of them has to die. And it's a toss-up really between Bran and Arya. But I feel like if Bran died, then who else? You know, the Three-Eyed Raven has to be in the world still. And so it'd be weird to not have him. But it's kind of a toss-up, because the purpose of the Three-Eyed Raven is to protect against the Night King. I mean, it's also to record what happens in the world in terms of people and stuff, but also to protect against the Night King. So it's kind of a toss-up. But I don't want to, you know, put him in a maybe pile. And so he's on my no pile. But yeah, I feel like Arya, you know, it'd just be a good way for her to go defending Winterfell and defending her family. And when you're a fighter, it's really hard to say you're going to survive. So that's why I think she's going to die. And so for my no pile, I have the rest of the Starks. So it's Jon, Sansa, and Bran. I told you already why I believe Bran is going to survive Sansa, because I believe that she will end up leading, being the leader of Winterfell. And she's not really going to be a part of the battle. So there's that. And Jon, he has to survive because there has to be some kind of conclusion to his relationship with Dany, and everybody finding out that he is a Targaryen and all of that. So he's more important to the storyline after the Night King falls, and so that's why I believe he's going to live. He'll probably die by the end of the series, but not during this battle. I also believe that Tyrion and Jaime are going to live. Again, probably one or both of them will die by the end of the season, but they will survive this battle because they're so important, so pivotal to the whole Cersei King's Landing overall plot that it does not make sense for them to die. And then I also believe that Sam, Varys, the Hound, and Missandei will still be alive. Missandei, because I feel like Dany needs at least one person on her side that's still going to be alive. And then if the other people die, like Missandei's not really going to be a part of the battle again, and so that's why I feel like she's not going to die. And then, like I said, Dany needs somebody on her side still, so she'll be there for her. And then Varys, he's not going to be part of the battle, and you might still need his help when it comes to Cersei in terms of like his little birds or his spy techniques and all that. And then the Hound, I feel like he's going to die when he battles the Mountain. It just makes more sense that because they keep pushing the brothers together like that, and they made such a point to have him talk to the Mountain when they were at King's Landing and having that meeting, that I feel like that's the only way he's going to die. He's going to kill the Mountain, and he's going to be wounded from him, and then that's how he's going to die. And then Sam, I feel like he's become a more important character over the years than I would have thought. And again, he's not going to be in the battle, and he's just survived a lot, so I feel like he's going to make it through. So yeah, those are my predictions about who will live and die. I think I'm going to keep this list and kind of check off who actually does die and he survives and stuff like that, and we'll kind of do a nice little talk about it afterwards, you know, after I'm done crying and really getting over all of that. So yeah, we'll see. So that's my take on the episode, my favorite scenes, my favorite quotes, and who I think will live or die. Who knows what's going to happen? It's going to be epic. I cannot wait. I'm ready to get my heart ripped out, and then I'm ready to discuss it and just see how it all goes. So yeah, I think that's it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this little video, and I would love to know your thoughts about who you think is going to live or die. You know, some of your favorite quotes, favorite scenes, favorite characters, and all that. And so let me know, and I will see you guys. Ooh, the reaction episode is going to be so devastating. I cannot wait. It's gonna be crazy. I expect a non-stop reaction. Like, I don't know. It's gonna be crazy. All right. That's it for me today, guys. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.